Okay, welcome to our first stage presentation today. It's a special One Voice at a Time. One Voice at a Time is something we've been doing all around the community with special and interesting members of the community to ask them what they think about the future of San Diego, how they're dealing with things. We've been in Barrio Logan, we've been in Kensington, we've been all over town. Our next one we'll let you know and keep in touch. This one is a special one with Bill Fulton. Bill's the former mayor of Ventura, has moved down here to be the head of the director of planning of San Diego. He's well known. His textbook about urban planning is something that's handed out in universities all around California. It was before the recent blow up of interest in different areas of city government and politics. His was the biggest story in town. His job is to try to shuttle through these community plans for all the neighborhoods that are represented here and make sense of them and help them balance that smart growth principles with neighborhood preservation goals. And we're going to talk a lot about that. But Bill, do you want to talk about your background and why you chose to come here first?
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me here. Voice of San Diego does great work. I really appreciate the work you do. You have a great Twitter feed, by the way, yourself, which I really enjoy. I decided to come to San Diego because it's such a great opportunity. I have been working on planning issues in California in various capacities for the last 30 years. And I had gone to work for a national advocacy group in Washington, D.C. called Smart Growth America. And I had actually left California for the first time in 30 years. And when this opportunity came along, I realized this is the best opportunity I could think of to try to take the principles and the ideas that I've been advocating and that I think are timely today in California and actually make them work on the ground. You've got a good, solid transit system. You have a great backbone of neighborhoods. You have wonderful neighborhoods that need to be preserved and terrific areas that need to be made more vital and need to be developed. So it's a terrific challenge. I've been here for 4 weeks now. So I've been a resident of San Diego actually for almost a month. And I'm having a great time.
What have you learned about San Diego so far? And is everything that's happening a tremendous distraction or pulled you away from the mission you were brought on here for?
Well, those are two different questions. I'll answer the second one first. What's going on is not affecting us very much in our day-to-day work. Having Walt Eckert come in was a terrific move. And Walt, as the COO, has been overseeing the operations of the city. If anything, we've actually upped our game, recognizing that we have to show in the emerging planning department, we have to show that we really are moving forward, and I'm really excited. We've had community plans in progress for many years, and none of them have been adopted yet. On my fourth day on the job, the Planning Commission approved the Barrio Logan Community Plan. I take full credit for that, by the way. And that will be going to the City Council in September, and we'll take it from there. As to your second question, what have I learned? Like an unbelievable amount of stuff. But what it really adds up to, having visited and worked in San Diego as a consultant over many years, but now living here and being intensely involved with the communities and the neighborhoods every day, is what a big, diverse city San Diego is. I think nationally, if you look at it from the outside, it doesn't seem that way. It just seems like, you know what the national reputation of San Diego is. It's a sunny place in Southern California where people go in February from the East Coast to go to conferences, right? That's the national image. But it is at once large with great small neighborhoods. It is diverse. The neighborhoods are all different. There's a very diverse economy. There's a blue-collar working class economy around the port. There's a big tourist industry. There's all the tech stuff up by UTC. It is, and I don't even know all the neighborhoods yet. That's the amazing thing to me, is what a big, diverse city San Diego truly is. And I think that's a terrific challenge to build on, not only on the planning, but also on the economic development side, which I'm also probably going to oversee for the city.
Right. Let me, just one more question about present before we get into the future. Denise Montgomery, who ran the city's, or was appointed just recently to the city's Arts Commission to lead that, She said she could not in good conscience stay on the mayor's service right now. You've made a different decision. Can you help us understand why?
I was sorry to see Denise go. I was very excited about meeting her and working with her. The mayor asked me to come and be a line department head with hundreds of employees. I made that commitment to the mayor, I made that commitment to the people who work in the planning department, and I made that commitment to 1.3 million people. I'm prepared to move forward, and the reassuring thing for me is that there are 10,000 people who work for the city of San Diego who come to work every day, and they try to make a better city for everyone who lives here and works here. And I've made that same commitment to my staff, the people who work for me, and to the people in the neighborhoods and the people of the city, because the challenges and the opportunities that I was presented with when the mayor asked me to take this job, those are unchanged. Those are unchanged. And the vision the vision that has been laid out to focus on the neighborhoods and revitalize some of the neighborhoods that have been overlooked, those challenges remain, and they are just as relevant and just as significant as ever. And I think, and I don't want to walk away from that, from my commitment to not only to the mayor, but to the people who work for me and the people of San Diego.
So I think smart growth, which you're known so much for, involves the word growth. There are a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with that word in San Diego. We have places like the Uptown group that is actually advocating for a lower density future than what is currently planned. How do you balance growth with neighborhoods who are very frustrated with the idea of more density of infrastructure problems and the like?
That's a good question. Let me answer it in a couple of ways. One is that in my experience of 30 years in California, what I have found is that when a community tries to deny that growth is going to occur, that backfires, and that is not as useful as understanding that some growth will occur and figuring out how to manage it to the community's or the neighborhood's advantage. To simply try to deny that it's going to happen usually means it's going to happen anyway, and it doesn't happen as well as it could. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that there is no question that the single biggest challenge in assisting the orderly future additional growth and development of the city, to the extent that that is necessary, is the fact that we have an infrastructure deficit that is billions of dollars. And if we are going to put additional growth in the right locations, in the neighborhoods, mostly in transit-rich locations around the city, we are going to have to address the infrastructure problem as well. And remember that although developers can pay their fair share of the infrastructure that is required by their development, they cannot legally be required to cover the deficit that already exists. And so that is, in my mind, we will do some great plans. We will listen to the community. Some communities will be more interested in having more development than others, and that's fine. We will focus that additional development in the right locations as much as we can. But unless we also solve this infrastructure deficit problem, we will never truly be able to implement and have the city of villages that has been called for here over the last 10, 12 years.
Let's talk about specific neighborhoods. What about that Uptown Plan that's been going through? Have you had discussions with them about downzoning, or whether this is the right balance for that?
Right. I'm just beginning to have those conversations. Remember, I've been here less than 4 weeks, so I haven't. I apologize for not having solved all the problems that I was confronted with on my first day.
So 8 weeks is going to be good?
8 weeks. We'll check back in a month.
Yeah.
Politifest August.
Right.
Right. We, as you know, as those of you who are familiar with our efforts know, that we have sort of combined the Uptown, North Park, and Golden Hill community plan updates. Those have been going on for a while. I did work several years ago as a consultant on the North Park update in the early stages of it. We are hopeful, and you're right, those different neighborhoods have different objectives, different goals, and different attitudes about additional development. But I think what we have to do in every case is say, okay, what is it that your community is lacking that you want, and how can we help you get it? And in some cases, additional infrastructure money, if we can figure out how to raise it, will help you get those things. In some cases, additional development will help you get those things. I've spent a lot of time in the Encanto neighborhood at Euclid and Mark, at the Euclid trolley stop, which is the second busiest transit hub in the city. That's a neighborhood which has been overlooked for a long time, which would clearly welcome a fair amount of additional development, particularly around the trolley stop, and where between Jacobs, the city, and MTS, those three entities own 100 acres right around the trolley stop. So I think it's a different answer in every neighborhood, and our goal is not only our goal has to be to balance the interests of each neighborhood against the interests of the city as a whole. If we have put an enormous infrastructure investment into a neighborhood such as a trolley stop, we want to be able to take advantage of that and maximize the value of that, for example.
Can you explain quickly what a community plan is? How many are going forward right now?
Right.
I mean, the Cliff Notes is this is the plan that a community sets in place, right, that if projects conform to, they have a much easier time getting through the process. But some of these community plans are very out of date. So which ones are going forward now?
The community plan is basically the framework for future both public investment and private development in each community. There are 42 community plan areas in the city. Most of them also have community planning groups that the city works with. There are about 9 of them and you're right, most of the community plans have not been updated since the 80s or the early 90s, so they are considerably out of date. There are about 9 updates that are currently in progress. Barrio Logan I mentioned, Encanto and Southeast, we cut Southeast into 2. Uptown, North Park, Golden Hill. There are Midway, Old Town and Midway. Many of the older neighborhoods where you might expect considerable infill development because of various circumstances, we do have community plan updates underway. There are a few other neighborhoods where we have smaller, more focused plans underway. The frustration.
Do you support those smaller plans, like in southeastern San Diego?
I think that I was not referring to that particular one. We have been doing a kind of an update in Navajo right around the trolley stop there, and a trade-off that we have to figure out in the long run is how specific, small s specific, do these plans have to be in order to be really useful as guides for development. And I think one of the things we have to look at, and we are beginning to look at, is this traditional way of doing a whole community plan update together, is that what makes sense when most of the new development, remember that community plan system was created when San Diego was still largely undeveloped and the new community plans were greenfield suburban developments. Now we're in a situation where we're almost an entirely built out city. In every community, the vast majority of the land in that community is not going to change. It's usually single-family housing or some kind of older housing, not going to change. Where we're going to see changes around the transit stations and along the commercial corridors. So I think a question we have to ask ourselves as we go along is, should these community plans focus more and more on these change areas? And how does that affect the way we analyze those? And/or, to your question, are there other more small s or large s specific plans that need to be done in certain locations in order to set the table for the right kind of development? That's the kind of thing we're looking at now. But what we typically do is we do a community plan, and when we also do a code update at the same time. So in Barrio Logan, what we did was we have a community plan update. We have also created some new zones in the zoning code appropriate to mixed use, and we're going to see whether that facilitates the development a little bit easier. There's a lot of big questions there. Over the last 5 or 6 years, the city has initiated 8 or 9 community plan updates. Currently, the number of community plan updates that have completed is 0. So what we have to do is simultaneously have to figure out how to move those plans along faster and figure out how to make those plans more effective in targeting in those change areas and making sure that the large swaths of housing, single-family housing and others in the existing neighborhoods are protected.
A common boogeyman in San Diego is always described as the developer or the developers, plural. That they're just inherently negative force in local politics, special interests, that sort of thing. Are they an inherently negative force in San Diego politics and San Diego's future?
Development in and of itself is not negative. In fact, one of the things we've learned, I think this is a transition we've made over the last 20 or 30 years, not only in San Diego but elsewhere in California, as we have gone from what I would call a more, a suburban greenfield approach because we had more raw land, to a more infill approach. In suburban areas, this was especially true in San Diego. If those of you remember the 80s, and I think it was Prop A in the A, which limited the amount of houses, remember that, which was about 1987, as I recall. There was a concern that more development just made your life worse, right? That there was, and that was partly because of the suburban pattern. There was more traffic, invariably more traffic. All the traffic got centralized into arterial choke points because of the way suburbs work. I feel differently now because I believe that development properly done in existing neighborhoods in the right locations at the right scale can actually help to repair some of the problems that those neighborhoods have had. And yes, there's a difference, I think, between a neighborhood like Uptown, which is doing fine, right? And there may not be a lot of things that they want that they don't have, and a neighborhood like Southeast, which has been overlooked for a long time. So that's why I say it has to be dealt with on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis. But overall, I believe that the right type of development located in the right places at the right scale in our existing neighborhoods, especially near transit, can help plug the holes and repair all those things in the neighborhoods that we have seen torn apart over the last 50 years.
Let's distinguish something real quick. Planning versus development services and permitting. You're not actually overseeing both, correct?
That is correct. I am not. I am currently the director of a department that doesn't exist. And I would like to keep it that way for as long as possible. As you'll remember, Scott, that planning got merged into development services. That is one big department, 600 people.
Under the former mayor.
That is 600 people. Includes all the building inspectors, all the code enforcement officers, everybody who issues a permit, but also the long-range planning, economic development, facilities financing, and so forth. When the mayor brought me in, what we began to talk about, and you published the proposed org chart in Voice of San Diego, which was an early draft that we're still working on.
Was that a problem?
No, that wasn't a problem because the mayor had promised to release it publicly, and so that was fine.
All right.
It just wanted, some people interpreted that as being this is what will happen. It was an idea that the mayor's office had.
Got it.
And what I've said all along is that our job as planners is not done when the plan is done, even though that's sometimes what we think. Our job as planners is not done until there's real improvements on the ground in the neighborhoods implementing the plans that we work on behalf of the communities. So therefore, that means two things. That means, number one, we must continue to have a strong connection with development services. And in fact, our permit planners and our long-range planners work pretty well together. They often come to me with a problem like on a community plan amendment. Some developer wants to change something. And it also means we need to create a stronger tie between community plans and our capital improvements, what's called our CIP. There is, of course, a community effort, which Howard was just describing about a grounds-up community planning group effort to allocate some of the capital improvement money, which is a really innovative, wonderful idea. But at the same time, we have to make sure, particularly if infrastructure deficit is the problem in most neighborhoods, we have to make sure that after we update the community plans, the city in its capital improvements actually builds the highest priority things that we have called for in the plans to improve the neighborhoods and to allow the additional development that we find desirable to occur.
Thank you so much. Bill
Thank
Fulton.
you.